Hi! We've never done a game jam before, so when Game Dev TV announced their jam, we knew we had to try and win it. Edward kindly persuaded the FoxByte team to participate and make a game. Or else. Here's how that went. Woo! After assembling the Avengers equivalent of a game jam team, we had to delegate our work based on our individual skills. And so, with our roles firmly established, we waited with bated breath for the start of the challenge of our lifetime. The theme was about to drop. The countdown felt like an eternity, every tick of the clock adding to the irreversible fate of time. Our very human bodies are a grain of sand in the ever-flowing hourglass of life. A passenger along for the ride, evolving with nature and oneself until we succumb to the moment of final respite. The theme was Tiny World. Yeah, it's a little bit vague. You can literally make anything that fits. We sort of expected something along the lines of a gameplay mechanic or some kind of creative restriction, but we can work with this. And work with it. The first real challenge was the time, and I'm not talking about the 10 days we had to make the game. Being in the Great Balkanic region, the theme reveal was at 12 AM. So we got straight to work and went to sleep, hoping a game idea would come to us in a dream. Except we couldn't sleep and spent all night thinking about what to make. And with all of us fully rested, early next morning we hopped on Discord to brainstorm last night's ideas. We got many interesting ideas, some of them having too big of a scope or that didn't seem fun or that were basically ripping off other games. Among these we have gems like Ant Lemming Copy 2D, Protect the Cheese, Skyblock, Ship in a Bottle, in the bathtub. Yeah, those were not very inspiring, but we also have some good ones, like a racing game on that cool road carpet which we decided against, because getting the feel right is just very difficult for racing games. But anyways, we ended up with two contenders. A spore-inspired bacteria evolution roguelike, where you battle inside of an average American at lunchtime. Or a cozy terrarium building game where you have to create habitats for your critter customers by throwing items into a terrarium in a Suica-like style. We went back and forth between these ideas for a while. We gave them ratings out of 5 for each of the categories in the jam. In the end, we decided to go with the cozy game because the idea was simply more unique and closer to the theme. It was a perfect mix of complexity and scope that we felt confident we could pull it off with enough polish before the deadline. With the game now picked, here are the mechanics we need. You gotta be able to grab and throw items, and you must be able to pour some soil. Simple, right? Well, as it turns out, we actually needed more mechanics, but we'll get to those later. But anyways, I opened up a new Unity project and started with the easy stuff, the grabbing. This is Qbert. He's gonna be our little test subject, but we need to tell him what to do. So we write some code to let us grab him. And we got some errors. It must have been a cosmic ray causing a bit flip. With the Freak Nature event over, with no code changes whatsoever, the grabbing now works. But as you can probably see, it doesn't feel too good. It's falling way too quickly, and it's missing that sway. I want you to feel like you're gingerly picking up the items with your two fingers. But anyways, to fix the sway problem, I took advantage of your mom's favorite app. Hinge is a Unity component that allows you to create, well, a hinge between two objects. Except it's horrible and it doesn't do what you expect, and I hope it gets run over by a runaway dump truck. So then, I tried the spring joint, which went well. What the fuck is going on? What? Finally, I settled on my precious Target Joint 2D. It just works. And with that, the grabbing is done. And it only took 3 hours. Later, I added some very tasteful placeholder items to throw around the scene. Rip Qbert, you will be missed. Meanwhile, Edward was tackling the more complicated pouring mechanic. I'll let him explain how it works because I don't know and I don't want to know. Edward, take it away.
Right, the pouring mechanic. Man, that was a pain in the ass. We had to run the game in the browser. So yeah, the optimization was everything. At first, I thought about cellular automaton. If you ever played the Motoi or even Noita, that's the principle used in order to achieve the physics in those games. That's basically a computation model where pixels in a grid can simulate sand physics if you do it right. But nah, I had to scrap it. It was too slow and messy. I wanted something quick, flexible, and less brain melting. So what's my genius idea? Just spawn in 1,000 balls per second and watch the FPS drop straight to 0. It worked perfectly. Then I just hacked together a placeholder terrarium, made a particle prefab, gave it a rigid body and a circle collider, stripped out all the friction and bounce, and somehow it actually worked. Now we have to make it pretty. I shoved it all onto another layer, rendered it with a separate camera, used some downscale and upscale trickery to achieve a blurry look, threw in some shader magic for outlines, and boom, fake air particles. And then for sand, even easier. Just copy paste everything, shrink the balls, change the color, and when the FPS hits 0 again, just nuke their physics properties once they stop moving.
And with that, the core mechanics are complete.
Hooray! Yay!
But the game's still missing something. Story. While Edward and myself were slaving away in the code mines, my lovely girlfriend Cris was masterfully cooking up the narrative. She created the unique characters you can meet in the game, each with their own quirks, items, and very colorful dialogue. For this jam, we settled on only having 8 levels that each represent a day in your little store. Each day has its own customer with their own little story. After you build a terrarium, the customer will react depending on how good you did. So you better do well or don't. It's up to you. But of course, story and mechanics were not gonna be enough. We needed visuals. That's where our next challenger steps into play. Razvi the artist. He took the game from looking like this to this. Yeah, he had to do a lot. He was responsible for the UI, UX, the characters, their items, the background, and the each page. Everything you see in the game is hand-drawn by him. It was a monumental amount of work that all needed to be done in just a short week. Thankfully, he simply built different and handled all of that, while we moved on to the next important step. How do we actually progress through the levels? We didn't think about this. After a panicked brainstorming session, an idea popped up. What if the customers gave you an image you'd have to match? What a brilliant idea. That's a very unique way of having the player get scored. There isn't any other game with this mechanic. We might be the first ever to do it. It would be incredibly sweet and awesome, and the audio should be fading. So, show picture, have a player match it. But how do we do it? We came up with this innovative system where the entire level is stored inside the prefab. This prefab is made up of ghost items. These are just a copy of the original items but without any collision, and the camera doesn't see them. We position them in the level prefab, then we pass them to the level scriptable object. And with that we can now calculate the player score easily. You just take the position of a player placed item and compare it with the same ghost item. You use the distance between them to add the score, and bam, you're done. We also added some sticks and stones you can place to help balance some items and to cut the amount of things that needed to be drawn. A very simple, robust, and elegant solution. Absolutely flawless. What? You're asking what happens if you use the same item twice in the same level? Sound is very important. Your game could look like shit if it sounds good enough. In my hour of insanity, I decided that every item type should sound differently based on what it hits. Here's how that looks visually. What's more, every item type has an array of 5 sounds to pick from. And you might think I just used some sort of script to mix the 2 random sounds from the object and collision sound arrays, but I didn't think of that until right about now. So instead, I just combined them manually in Audacity until every collision combination had its own 5 sounds. For those keeping track at home, that's a total of 110 sounds, including UI and other SFX. Would I recommend you do it like this? Absolutely not. Was it fun to do? Yeah, a little at the start. Well, the important thing is that we have some juicy sound effects and plenty of time for the levels. For the levels, we used scriptable objects. They hold all the data necessary in a level. The customer data with the sprites, the level prefab we set up earlier, and all the dialogue. The levels were relatively quick to make, except for adding the dialogue. One of the jam requirements was not to use any paid assets, so we only had 2 options if we wanted dialogue. We either implement our own custom dialogue system, or we use a free asset from the Unity asset store. Because we didn't have the time, we had to go for the asset store option. Looking back at how much time was spent trying to add some basic functionality to it, it might have been just faster to make our own. But you can learn from our mistakes. So at least it was not a massive waste of time. While I was struggling adding the dialogue, Edward was trucking on implementing the UI Razvi design for us. All the work so far was done after we all finished our 9-to-5 jobs. We used Codex to be able to organize who was working on what, so we don't lose any time. Other Kanban flavors are available. It's not the best platform out there, but if you want to participate in a jam, having a tool like this is as essential as version control. But don't go giga corporate with it, that's cringe and you should feel bad for even thinking about it. Oh, and speaking of version control, if you can pull out, you can pull a Git repo. Always use version control. With just under 20 hours left, with all the levels mostly added, the main game loop was finished. You can now play through the entire game and get stars, even replay the levels to get a better score from the level selector. We then did lots of playtesting. While I was squishing bugs, Edward was optimizing for running the game in a browser. Razvi started work on building the itch page for the jam to complement the game nicely. We were all adding a little seasoning to the proverbial steak. With a little over 8 hours left, we hit the submit button. We were exhausted, but we had a game we were proud of. All our hopes and dreams for our first jam being sent into the ether, our destiny is in the hands of the gamers, powerless to change the current, only opening the sails of the ship we've built, sailing wherever it may take us. Would people even like our game at all? Had we done enough to secure the win? Could we become the next indie success story? The voting would be done by participants who submitted the game. During the following week, we managed to play and rate 537 games out of the total of 1011 entries. After a week of playing and rating games, time has finally come. Voting ended. The results were up. Did we do it? Was our game good enough to get the win? Nah, but it did get 14th place overall out of 1000. I'd say that's pretty good. Having over just 200 votes, Tiny Company is the second most voted game of the Jam. Even though it didn't win the Jam, people really seemed to enjoy the game. They left so many wonderful comments on our game that we decided to turn it into a full Steam release. Perhaps it didn't win the Jam as we expected, but it did win the hearts of the people, which is more than we could have asked for. So here's what we're working on for the full Steam release of Tiny Company. A full story rewrite, 8 more story levels with unique characters and dialogue, new item types, daily and endless modes, better UI, original soundtrack, and lots of tweaks and bug fixes. The game is set to release on October 24th. By the time you see this video, it might be out, so you can go check it out. If not, you can wishlist it on Steam to get notified when it does. Even though we didn't win, it was a good challenge and we learned a lot about working under pressure and as a team. If you're into making games, I would highly recommend trying a Jam, because who knows what game you'll end up making. And if you've watched until now, thank you. It means a lot. Send this video to that 3-person group chat with a weird name, leave a like and hit that subscribe button for the algorithm gods and tell us what game you would make with the theme of Tiny World. Thanks again for watching and see you in the next one.